Mhm. Here we go.
Hi.
Yay. Hello. Welcome, welcome. We did
Thank you.
it.
Finally.
Yes. Oh, you look so pretty. Look at
Thank
you.
you. So do you.
I'm super excited. I was chatting with everyone while we were, doing our joins and all of that. Oh, hi. Thanks for joining all. And so I'm just going to go ahead and kick it off. It's 6:05 and give everyone just some information about you before we get into that nitty gritty. Again, everyone grab that popcorn. So
Absolutely.
today, our topic is on shifting perspectives. So, the line between belly dance and our personal lives. And there's a lot to say here, so we'll get into it here shortly. But I wanted to give you, for those that don't know Luna of Cairo very well, or maybe you've heard of her, you've worked with her, but it's always good to just get a little more. So, I'm going to give you the official bio. So, Luna of Cairo is an internationally recognized belly dancer. She's the only American belly dancer with a unique combination of a 10-year performing career in Cairo, guys, and native level fluency in Arabic. Like you would think she literally, it's really good. She has taught belly dance workshops all over the United States, Puerto Rico, Canada, England, Ukraine, Poland, Japan, China, and Vietnam, of course, Egypt, Lebanon, and Qatar. In addition to her dancing, Luna holds a master's degree in Middle Eastern Studies from Harvard. Okay, so she's a nerd. Yay. She's also the author of Kisses from Cairo, which is her blog. Go ahead and put the link after so anyone that wants to see the blog, read about it. It's chock full of great information and always like very direct blogs. I've been reading it for many years. And it's a blog which explores like the realities of living and working as a belly dancer in Africa's greatest metropolis. So thank you for joining us. Yay!
Thank you for having me. This is super exciting.
Yes, so like with all the episodes, Luna was referred to by one of our past instructors, Hind. And so it's pretty neat to just see it kind of like everything going around and seeing where this takes us on the show. The goal of Let's Talk is to talk about the difficult topics, the things that you talk about, not really out there. You talk about it behind the scenes, maybe to your husband, your friend, your bestie, or whoever, but you usually don't talk about it in the open. So it's a space where we can talk about this professionally, intelligently, with respect, disagree respectfully, have a great time, and get some perspective. Maybe you think about it different. Maybe you learn something. Maybe you go, oh, I never thought of it that way. That is what this is for. So I'm really excited. I wanted to go ahead and see if Luna, you wanted to give a little bit of your background, on this topic and what you kind of bring to the table so people can know.
Okay. So I think a lot of people know me, and there's some newer dancers who may not. But as you had mentioned, I spent 10 straight years dancing professionally in Cairo. I did everything from the tourism sector to weddings, high profile events, military events. Believe it or not, the Egyptian military is very involved in contracting all sorts of entertainers, not just dancers, but singers, actors. So I got to see sides and aspects of Egypt that a lot of dancers don't have the opportunity to.
Yeah.
Combine that with my cultural knowledge and all of the work that I had done in college and in grad school and even just studying abroad gave me a very, very unique perspective on not only how this dance fits into the culture, but just the culture at large. It's history, it's political struggles, social struggles, all of that. So it's nice to have sort of like a 360 view rather than just going in strictly as a dancer and seeing things from that perspective. Um,
Plus, I'm from New York. You're from New York.
I believe
Childhood in New
you
York.
were from New York.
Yeah.
Wait, what part?
uh, Queens Village. Queens Village.
Okay. Well, I'm from Kings County, so we're royalty here. I'm from Brooklyn. Nice.
Perfect. Perfect. For those of you that are joining and have, maybe this is your first episode of the podcast. So I'm Jen. Hi. I was a full-time dancer for many years in the US. And basically what will play into this topic was been a ballet dancer for a long time and almost as long have been basically in the corporate world for many years. More recently, my own business, after many years of doing things and juggling the two, has been a hoot, and we'll get into that shortly. So, without further ado, let's just maybe just go over when we say this topic, when we like sat down, we're like, okay, what are we going to call this? Like, what is this going to be? Shifting self perceptions as a belly dancer. Like, what does this mean? Like, what are we going over? Tell me a little bit about it in your view.
So if I remember correctly, when we were sort of discussing this, there were some ideas floating around in my head based on my own experience. There is how the culture perceives you as a dancer. That's
Mm-hmm.
one layer of this case. There is how you perceive yourself as a dancer, as an artist, as a human being. And I found that for a very long time, I was able to keep um, a very solid line between those two perceptions, owing to the fact that, well, yes, while I'm participating in a dance of this culture, I am not of that culture.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, I'm a native of Brooklyn. My family is half Cuban, half Italian, so we have no Middle Eastern roots. I would say that growing up in the 80s and the 90s, into that mixed heritage family with a very strict Catholic background, I had a very strong sense of identity. I had a very strong sense of who I was, who my community was, what was permissible and what was not permissible. And of course, dancing was always one of those things like, who cares, like dance. That was something that was always encouraged, even on the religious side. So I went to Catholic schools my whole life, up to and including an all-girls Catholic high school. Now that was, I don't wish that on my worst enemy, but um, I'm just showing you, the depth of my roots and my identity. And dancing was never a conflict. It was never something that I was told not to do, whether that be ballet, whether that be belly dance. Um, of course, that's not the case in the culture where
Yeah.
dancing is, for the most part, discouraged and frowned upon in the professional capacity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You all know that everybody dances in social occasions, weddings, birthday parties, on the streets. That's a totally different um, sack of onions, right?
Yeah.
But um, this is a real problem in the Middle East, and I believe that you had another guest on your little video segment talking about that,
Yeah.
someone who is directly impacted by that. So for me, because that is not my background, I was able to very easily compartmentalize what I was doing and who I was and what my intentions were and what my angle was versus how people of the culture see me and what they impose on me.
For sure.
Um,
Yes. Very true. Very true. It's such a different thing, Latin or American, and then someone that's of the culture and what they experience. It's nuts how different it can be. So I get it. Tell me a little bit about one of your experiences, basically when we're talking about that separation, like you said, you're able to separate that. And so have I in many as Latin culture, Americanized as well. Being able to keep that separation, and sometimes when they've kind of converged and it's caused problems, it could be like in relationships, like dating. So I know you had one of those stories that was a hoot, if you don't mind sharing.
sure. Um, well, before I get into that story, what I did want to say is that even the strongest among us, and I consider myself one of those people with a very strong sense of identity, there were points where I started to lose focus of who I was. I became very absorbed in my dance persona, very absorbed in the fact that I am now in the culture. Um, for lack of a better term, I went native. And anybody who was there with me can attest to that. I refused to live in expat communities. I refused to live in even middle class Egyptian communities. I put myself in like the lowest class, working class neighborhoods, specifically because I wanted to absorb as much as I could about the culture, speak like the people, act like the people. I wanted to soak up their body language, everything, because I was just so obsessed and so in love with what I was seeing. And um, I believe that after a certain amount of time, certain amount of years doing that, I started to the line between who I was and who people saw me as was starting to blur.
Mm.
And that bled over into my time when I came back to the United States. I had a very, very messed up, confused sense of identity. Not only because of my experiences and where I've been, but also because I am very open minded, sometimes to the point of my own detriment. But yeah, so the anecdote that you're referencing, I came back to the US in 2019. I had had enough of Egypt. And what's the first thing that I did? I started dating an Egyptian. And yes.
Of course.
uh, I don't know. I think a part of me was feeling like I need some kind of connection to this culture because I had just changed my country, moved my country, changed my work, changed everything about my life at one time. That's a huge let's just say I was extremely depressed. I was
That's a
depressed.
lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
Most people change one thing in their lives at one time.
Yeah.
I've changed everything. And I was like, and not only that, like I was in Tampa, Florida. I wasn't in New York City. Like the closest thing you could get to Cairo is probably New York City. I was in Florida and I just felt lost and disconnected. So first thing I did was, date an Egyptian guy. He turned out to be a very religious Coptic Christian, which is fine. And I noticed that he had a very big problem with me dancing. Ironically, he met me at one of the places that I danced at regularly, and he was a customer. And not only was he a customer, but this guy would dance. I mean,
Okay.
he
Good
would
man.
just he would just let it rip. He'd get on the dance floor and he'd outdance me, and so I knew who he was. I knew of him. And then I happened to see him on a dating app and we both swiped on each other. And he's like, hey, do you know me? I'm the guy that comes to all your shows. So here I am thinking, oh, this is really cool. So he already knows I dance. He's seen me dance. This is not going to be a problem. He's Egyptian, but he's in America. It's not going to be a problem. Whoa. Boy, was I mistaken.
Uh-oh.
I got the lecture of a lifetime about how I am doing a devil's work. I am being a home wrecker. Even though I'm not like engaging in any kind of relationship with anyone who's married, but his point of view was that men watch me dance and then I distract them from their emotional commitments and their family commitments to their wives. I don't think I have to flesh out this viewpoint. It speaks for itself. And for some reason, I think I just wasn't in a good mental space. And I let it affect me. I did break up with him because it only lasted 2 months, but he was extremely controlling, no shock there. Um, Stalking, all kinds of psychotic behavior that I just wasn't going to put up with. But for some reason, that lecture that he had given me about what I was doing and the effect it was having on men, for some reason, it's, I don't want to say resonated with me, but it made me think. It made me think and question myself and what I was doing in a way that I hadn't thought about in 20 years, that I hadn't even thought about in Egypt. Um, and it raised this question of, well, because my rebuttal to him was always, well, that's not my intention. I don't go into it trying to
Yeah.
steal someone's husband. I
Yeah.
don't go into it trying to break homes, right? And he said to me, your intention is irrelevant. Whatever your intention is, this is the effect that you're having. So you need to be cognizant of that, and you need to basically stop dancing. And I found that, after certain events that happened in this country, 2020, 2021, I found that the entire country was having a conversation about intent versus effect. And of course, it hit me first in a different context and within the context of my personal life and my dancing. But the whole country was having this conversation about, even sometimes when you have good intentions, the effect of your actions uh, is negative and harmful and invalidates whatever good intentions you have. And of
Hmm.
course, we all know the popular cliche, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Well, it's also paved with bad intentions. So the road to hell is just paved with intentions. But I, my point being, um, I just went through this phase where I really, really started to think about the consequences of my actions and the effects of my actions, and um, whether or not my intention was always relevant. And I think that I started to analyze every single performance after that, and I would scrutinize, in particular, the reactions of men, audience members. And you know how they say sometimes you have to believe something to see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Mm. So you kind of
yes,
put it to the
I
test with a new lens, a new viewpoint.
I did. I mean, I'm not saying that I made an overt attempt to, be more
Yeah.
vulgar or provocative in my dancing. No, not at all. I just paid attention to their expressions because
Yeah.
I'm the dancer that pays attention to women. I just,
Same.
yeah, I'm there for them. They love it in a
Hmm.
completely different way than the men do. But I started to pay attention to the men, and I'm like, you know what? This kid, as controlling and as manipulative as he was not completely incorrect. Um, Even a broken clock tells the correct time twice a day. So it made me a little more introspective and think about that. No, it did not make me stop, but it made me more conscious of what I do, and it made me just think of other areas in life where the effect of your actions can be so harmful that it invalidates whatever positive intentions that you may have had.
I find it such an interesting perspective. I love that, like your open mind to it. Like, oh gosh, like what could this viewpoint? Like, I have to admit, yeah, I just look at the women. Like, I don't really care the guys. I really don't. They're the ones that I want like my tips from when I would get tips and things like that. So to look at the men, even like, at my age, I haven't even done that. It's almost been 20 years, right? I don't really care to look at them. So it must be so interesting. Like that just boggles my mind. Like, yeah, have we looked at the others? Like, what would their reaction be? Not just gonna not change anything. I'll never stop dancing, but so interesting to like explore it and think of it and give it a chance. I think that's pretty brave. Pretty
Exactly.
ballsy.
Give it a chance, even though it might totally demolish everything I ever thought about what I was doing. And
Yeah.
and that's fine. I like to take intellectual and emotional risks that way with myself. But what made it even scarier for me was that, I did engage in these conversations with other men, not all of them from the region, some of them American, some of them Latin. I hate to say it, but they all told me the same thing he said. And, maybe not in a very judgmental, religious, you're
Way.
going to hell kind of way, but like they would tell me, yeah, we do look at you that way. Yeah, you do have that effect. And yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
the male brain is a very complex, interesting thing, and I try to stay away from it as much as I can. But sometimes it's nice to just, you know, recognize the differences and look at that.
So kind of how interesting it is that you met from your belly dance persona, you cross that bridge into now a personal relationship with this person at the time, and then that clash that kind of happened in that instance, right? Like there's some people that they meet someone and like maybe it's like the belly dancer and the drummer, and then they end up being, having their personal lives and it meshes and it's great and it's like a little fairy tale. And then there's a lot of times where it doesn't quite work out that way. And so that could be so interesting. I just find it so funny because you met at the club, like you met in your show. And
Well, that's the double standard, though. That's
you
the double
know,
standard. It's okay for him to be there,
of
and it's okay
course.
for him to steal the limelight and bust a move and just,
Hmm.
that's fine, right? But those are the
Yep.
double standards that are pretty much, normal in Middle Eastern cultures. So
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. Um, yeah.
Love it. Love it. Let's see. I know that there was even like in I haven't had that experience of, having meeting someone in my workplace or etc. But I have had where my personal life bled into the belly dance life, like the opposite of yours, where I was dating someone nothing to do with my dance career. They knew I danced, and then we went through like a lot of fighting. Like I was so over him and so done. And I broke up with him like twice. And the second time, this guy shows up at my gig, like I'm doing my set, and he shows up to my one of my jobs, like I was doing that night. I was mortified. Like when I'm working, I am working. This is not like this is work. You don't just come and interrupt someone at their job and try to start drama. So that was
Mm-hmm.
so embarrassing. Like the DJ saw my face, had to like be like, Jen. I was like, I'll be back. I'm gonna take a break.
Right.
So uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's mortifying. And that's very
So
disrespectful.
yeah, I think in their mindset, very American mindset, like it's just I'm just coming to your job, I'm gonna come in and break. It's fine. You're like, no.
Well, I just don't think that they take it seriously. I don't think they understand
Yeah,
because it's art, because it's fun,
we're dancing.
because we're dancing, because we're wearing these, could be provocative costumes. They don't take it seriously. That's not work.
Hmm.
That's not work, right? Again, I don't agree with that, but I understand where that
Hmm.
perspective comes from.
Yes, it's one of those things that doesn't mesh well sometimes
Right.
between one life and the other.
Yeah, but I mean, speaking about men, I have found, well, up until very recently, probably every man that I've dated or been in a serious relationship with has met me through the dance. So their first interaction with me was in my capacity as a dancer.
Oh.
And yeah, it's always been a problem. I don't think I recognized it as such up until recently. And I had a few close, well meaning Middle Eastern friends sit me down and be like, hey, look, if you are seriously looking for somebody, you cannot lead with that. You cannot lead with that persona. That cannot be the first thing they see about you. You know how men are. They're visual. Once they see your body and you shaking around, they're not going to take you seriously. And it's like, all right, the modern feminist American in me wants to call BS. That's their problem if they're going to look at me that way. But you know what? I'm the kind of person that I recognize reality. I'm aware that we cannot always change reality. We can't always manipulate it and conform it to how we think the world should be. And I think I just accepted that and I said, let me try something different because you know what the definition of insanity is, right?
Same thing
So,
over.
right. So once it took me over 5 years to meet the man that I'm currently with, and in those 5.5 years, I was on the dating apps, and there was not one picture of me on those apps of me dancing, not one. I did not want to give any whiff, any indication that this was my hobby or this was my profession. No, I wanted them to meet Diana, not
Mhm.
Lulu. And I have to say, it worked out. Um,
Same.
I listened to my Arab friends, and
Hmm.
they steered me in the right direction. So it's nice to think that you got it all figured out and that you don't need advice from people, especially people from different cultures. But sometimes they see things that you don't, and sometimes their relationship to reality is a little bit more intimate than a lot of our relationships to reality. So
Yeah, and it's not like we're not like knocking anyone that's like, well, I met my husband and he knew I was a belly. I'm like, if that
no,
works for you, like
that's
that works for you,
fabulous. Hmm.
oh my gosh, like hallelujah, like I know like from my standpoint, and you're very similar in your like experiences where same, I didn't put anything about my dance when I was on the dating apps. I wanted to do something different because my previous partner like knew from the beginning and was like really intrigued in the beginning, was like super supportive in the beginning and all that mania. And who knows, what if something could have been different? So I did
Right.
the same. And then the person I've been with now for many, many years, has known little by more, little more over the years about it. And it seems to have worked so far. And it maybe it doesn't, right? But it's what's working so far for me personally.
Yeah, no, I find that that's happening with me right now. And I would dare to say that that might be the case for the majority of people. I just came to the realization that I want to be known for who I am, not what I do, whether that is dancing or my professional 9 to 5. I also don't talk about that for two reasons. I can't. And the second reason is I don't want to. Even if I don't want to. Like, I don't want to talk about work. That's not who I am. So I found that leading with who I am, what I believe, what I like, and just letting my personality shine was a much more effective approach to finding someone who is truly compatible with me and who loves me and appreciates me for who I am,
Yeah.
not for what I do.
Yeah. I love that.
Mhm.
Appreciate who you am and not what you do.
Yeah.
Yes. Are you familiar with the Enneagram? Have you heard of this before?
No.
Oh, okay. There's like a type that, like I think of like a type 3 that they just love. They want to be known for what they do more than like who they are, like on the outside. So I don't know. That just made me think of that. Anywho, my light keeps going off. Gotta love this. One moment. I need to
Oh,
land.
you're fine.
But
I
got
could
it.
I
Okay.
could identify with that. I could identify with that because I was like that for a very long time. But that's when I became Luna. That's when I became the belly dancer. It stopped being a persona and it became who I was. And yes, I wanted the whole world to know that I was a belly dancer and that was the most important thing about me. That's not sustainable. It's not the truth and it's not sustainable. But yeah, so I identify with what you just said.
I think of playing the devil's advocate because I know I've had, especially when I had announced I was going to retire some time ago, and that didn't last very long. But when I did, what comes to mind is like playing devil's advocate for some of these people. So it would be like, no, like you are one and the same. Like my belly dance persona is me. Like it is the same person, and I just could never identify with that. Like personally, like you may disagree. I don't know if you have the same role, but like when I perform, it's like a completely different. It's like a theatrical,
Oh yeah.
dramatic version of the nerdy person I am in the day. Like it's very different. So it's kind of like I could never mesh the two successfully for the things that I succeeded in my time. I don't
No.
know.
I
Weird.
I think what makes it different though, like in my case, the reason I was able to do that to the detriment of my mental health. Okay, I'll wait till you come back.
I'm hearing you. I had to put some light on.
Oh, okay. The reason I was able to do that to my own detriment was because that was my entire existence. I'm telling you, like I worked
Over.
7 nights a week for 10 years. I only took off when I was on my deathbed. And doing anywhere between 2 and 8 shows a night, and those shows are 45 minutes, and then you go home and your bedtime is 10 a.m., 11 a.m., sometimes noon. You sleep a couple of hours, you wake up, you go to the costume designers, you do your fitting, you get your, I mean, my whole life revolved around this. So I had no anchor into another alternate reality. I lost myself. I lost myself as a person. And, I forgot my name. I know it sounds insane. I forgot my actual name. Like Diana sounded like so, anyone that would call me that, it'd be like, it just feels wrong. And to the point where, like, my mother, when I would come home and visit, my mother would call me Luna and she would introduce me to people as Luna.
Oh my
And that's
God.
when I started, yeah, that's when I started to realize that I got a problem here. I really have a problem. This is not good. One of the realizations that made me realize, like, I need to leave. I need to get out of here. This is not healthy.
You're not alone. I think it takes over. I think many of us have experience where it takes over our life, even to a very unhealthy manner, working when you're sick, working when you're exhausted, you're burnt out, you're just going through ish. And it's just like everything, all your contracts you're signing, all the things you're reading, all the stuff you're studying. It's like everything is dance, which is
Mhm.
a wonderful thing, but like there's boundaries, right?
Limits.
So
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean,
I get
there,
that.
there were times when, because I spent so much time on the stage, I was living life on the stage. There were times when I had complete mental breakdowns on the stage,
Mm.
like bawling in tears and still dancing. Like it's not good. It's not healthy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how we learn. It's like those mistakes that help us grow. I wanted to see if, talking about mistakes, right? What is something that you were like, oh my God, I did this thing. But I'm now looking back in hindsight, you learned something great, something useful you've carried with you. What would be one of your mistakes? Mistaking and falling forward.
Oh boy. Uh, one of my mistakes. There have been many. I think letting this whole religious condemnation of what I was doing get to me more than it should. Like, it's one thing to consider it, it's another thing to completely alter your life because of it. And, you know, there was a very short period where somebody really convinced me that I should stop. And I did. I did for a few weeks. I said, let me try this again in the spirit of being open-minded and trying different things. I don't like to be a know-it-all. Yeah, I was miserable. I was miserable because, of course, I wasn't doing what I was doing. I was what I love to do. I was out the income, and when that person said, "Hey, want to go out tonight? How about we go see a belly dancer?" I said, "What?
Mm.
Excuse me?
Mm-hmm.
You, you suggested that I stop, and I took your suggestion, and now you want to go see a belly dancer." That's it. That's it. I started spewing venom, and I was, all these expletives flew out of my mouth, and just a little more, I probably would have gotten violent. And yeah, that was the end of that experiment. But, I'm glad that I went through it because I learned that I'm the one that's got to call the shots in my life. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think in a way, like, I don't regret that I did that because truly, it truly is a very Middle Eastern experience. Like, wait a minute, I just spent 10 years in Egypt and nobody has ever pressured me to quit dancing. This is what happens to Egyptian dancers. They have a marriage opportunity, and the condition is always, for the most part, unless that person proposing marriage wants her as a cash cow and he's going to make money from getting her. No, that's the thing. Then they're okay with her dancing. But if it is a true love marriage, something very ordinary and traditional, the condition is always you need to quit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, as much as I like to say that I went native, and yes, I learned the language, very proficiently. And yes, I was able to interact with people on their level. But one thing I never experienced over there was having someone breathe down my neck and tell me, you need to quit if you want your personal life to flourish. And hey, I let myself have that just a little taste of that experience here in the United States. Yeah, it is not fun, but hey, now I know what it is.
Did you realize anything, like, how do I word this? When you stop dancing, even for that short period of time, right? It feels very different. Did you feel lost without, let's call it, a certain schedule of activities that you're accustomed to? Or what was like the most difficult part of that experience?
Feeling lost was a part of it, but um, I was just so infuriated that I couldn't really feel anything
Like,
else. I
F
was just
you for telling me to quit the journey. Go on.
yeah, I was just so infuriated that every other feeling took a back seat. But yeah, of course, it's like, okay, wait, what do I do now? Friday and Saturday nights. What do I do? Like, this is my life. This is what I do.
Yeah.
This is my exercise. This is my social life. This is my money. This is what do I do now? So, yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know there was this, we were talking about this point in your dance career where, kind of going back to the beginning, you had your own sense of self, right? And you would disagree, like, you know, you rightly so, you would disagree with different perspectives about, like, you know, them saying, oh, you should be more sensitive to this, and it's like this, and this is how other people are. And you tried, you had an open mind, right? So I wanted to kind of go back into, sometimes you would, I think you want to say, like, you wouldn't walk the streets, you know, over there without someone, you know, your partner there with you. And I'm trying to remember, you always had to remind yourself that you were like a guest in their culture in your time, that, and like, no matter how wrong, like, you kind of perceive certain elements of the culture to be, you weren't there to change things.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that. So I found that really, like, very, very real. You know?
Yeah. I think what I was getting at was that I never lost sight of the fact that I was a guest in their culture. And that, yes, as an American born in the 20th century, right? Am I getting my centuries right? Born in the 20th century, it is now the 20th. Yes, as a 20th century American, perhaps my views of how the world is supposed to work, what gender relations are supposed to look like, ethics, morality, all of that is influenced by the time and place in which I was born. We're all products of our environment, right? So, wait, let me string those thoughts together. So, yeah, so of course, you know, I never lost sight of the fact that, yeah, I see how things are done in this culture. I don't agree with them, but, and I'm not saying everything, but some things. I am not here to change that. I am not here to impose my beliefs and my way of life on these people. I am no one to say that the way that I live my life and the things that I was taught in this country are superior to what they believe in. And, but yeah, other than that, living in Egypt is not for the faint of heart. I've had people, I know a lot of people have visited, have gone on tours. Maybe people have gone on like 13, 14, 15 tours, and that's great. But unless you've lived there on a daily basis for a prolonged period of time, you do not know what suffering is. You do not know what mental anguish is, because I don't even think we have time to get into it, but life is very difficult there for everybody. I'm not going to say for foreigners or for women. It is difficult for everybody. Standards of treatment, standards of behavior, respect, disrespect, all of that. So it takes a toll on your mental health. And there are times when my life got so debilitatingly insane and unhealthy. And I always had to remind myself, this is not reality. And I would always think of it as sort of like the movie The Matrix, where there is reality and then he gets transported into a different dimension. And I haven't seen that movie in a very long time, and I don't understand the specifics of it, but there's a parallel universe or an alternate reality. You can tap into it, but it's not real and it's not you. And that passport that I have, that passport became my Bible. And I never, ever, ever, this was probably some kind of psychological coping mechanism. In the 10 years that I was there, in the 12 different apartments that I lived in, I never unpacked my bags.
That's
Never.
crazy.
Yeah. I had stuff put away in my closets and my wardrobes, but those suitcases were always out, and they had clothes and they had stuff in them. And I think that was for me to soothe myself, because there were times when it got really, really bad. You know, whether I was taken to a police precinct, a police station for, you know, dancing with the wrong costume or having the wrong papers or whatever it was, or somebody like trying to attack me. I had a very hard time, as do most dancers if they're completely honest. And I needed to know that this was not my reality, and I could just, the press of a button, just tap out, just get out of it. So I don't know if that speaks to your question.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure, for sure. I know some of our listeners they haven't lived there or they don't know people that live there and know like their bestie's not there, like they don't know our stories. I know on the thread of mistakes, something that maybe some of the listeners here, maybe you guys listening might have something similar, let me know. But my experience has been for many years working at agencies until the last 2 years. And I remember my second to last agency, I had applied and it had been probably like a year break due to COVID because the agency before that had laid a bunch of people off. Just with everything with COVID, they were just like going under. So like everyone was like, oh my God. So anyways, long story short, a year without a job, I had been looking. And so on my resume, I was like, well, shit, like I have nothing for a year. I was like, okay, here's all the agencies from before. What was I doing the last year? Okay, I need to put like, okay, I was freelancing, development, okay, and I have a company, and it's like Bellydance by Jennifer Inc. I don't know why I put it. I've never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
So I get into the interview. They're so intrigued. They're like, tell us something that's like unique about you. And I'm like, oh, you guys see the resume. I'm like, okay. I was like, well, I'm like, yada yada belly dancer. They're like, wow, that's so cool, right? Like at first, they're pure Americans, and then they're like, wow, so you can like wiggle around or something like that. I was like, I perform, professional dance, sure, and I'm like, whatever. So I'm like, you hear stuff all the time when you dance. So okay, I ended up getting hired later on, but before like I think that onboarding week, like before you're like hired, you're meeting all the employees, and I'm like the director of these people, so you have to really meet them. And like several of the younger employees, they're very savvy on social media. They had like looked my ish up, which I had never experienced. It was for me very uncomfortable.
Yep.
Because I'm like, oh, people are searching for your real name. They have it. Now they're searching for this on the online. They're gonna find it if they put certain words together. It's not hard, and then it's like, oh, and they're like, oh yeah, one was like, oh yeah, I did a deep dive and all. I'm like, and I'm supposed to be your leader and your director. Oh my gosh, this is so interesting. I found it to be really odd, really uncomfortable, and not something that I would do again personally, just because of the questions and like the innocent comments that can kind of be like uncomfortable for me, knowing
Mm-hmm.
what it's like, really. It's
Yeah.
not for fun, like just fun and like, butterflies and sparkle everywhere. Like it's a real career. So that was a hoot. Have you ever had experiences like that in your like muggle job, as I call it, that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah. I had a very similar experience, except that I didn't have a 1 year gap on my resume. I had a 15-year gap on my resume.
Mm.
When I was in grad school and before that, I had jobs at the New York Times, the New York State Senate. I had a job at an Albany-based newspaper, um, at an NGO called the Coalition for the International Criminal Court. So I had a pretty solid resume for someone my age. I was in my early 20s. All of this like
That's
high
great.
profile experience, and then it's like my resume is going like this, right? And then like boom, like did she die? Right?
Mm.
Yeah, there was like a 15-year gap of professional experience. So, yes, I come back. I'm like, okay, I need to start a normal, ordinary American life. I need to find a 9 to 5, start applying. And I did the same thing. I'm like, well, I can't say that I was a housewife or a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
So I padded what I said a little bit. I put owner and founder of Middle Eastern Arts Performance Company or something like that. And under duties, I didn't write that I would just perform and dance around. I was like, no, 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 no. Accounting,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Marketing.
Um, Marketing, management, because hey, I manage anywhere between 5 and 25 full grown musicians, male musicians that, oh man, gender dynamics, the power differential, everything. I don't know how I did it, but yeah, I was like, if anybody has management experience and if anyone understands psychology, human nature, and child psychology, it's me, because I've been living this. I've been living this for you know 10 years that I was in Egypt, and intercultural psychology and experience. I put all that down. I made myself look amazing. Marketing, that I was able to maintain this blog and have this huge followership, all of this. And I got a lot of phone calls. I got a lot of phone calls from companies that I applied to, and a lot of the questions were, yeah, intrigue. Like, are you real? Because, like I said, I had Harvard, I had all these like fancy institutions that I worked at, and like belly dancer in Egypt. Are you real? Is this a scam?
Yes.
When they realized that I am a real person and this is my life, it was sort of like, wait, are you sure you want to work in an office? Are you going to be able to do that? I was like, you don't understand. I need to do this. The last thing I want to do is be on stage 7 nights a week. I am done. I want to sit in my boring cubicle with a lukewarm cup of coffee, and that's it. That's what I want my boring American life to be, because my life over there was so traumatic and so hectic that I looked forward to that boring, rote, monotonous
Face.
American life. I looked forward to going to Walmart and having that be the highlight of my day. Yeah, that's how tumultuous my life had been, that I crave that like normalcy, that boredom. Um, I don't anymore. That's a different story. But yeah, but the same, like you said, people stalk you. This is such a stalking culture.
It's
On
very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got hired, and like you said, what same thing that happened to you, everybody knew who I was before I even walked in the office, because they had seen whatever emails had gone out to the new employees. Okay, let's take everyone's email, pop it in Google, see who they are, where they've been, and they come up with this whole thing. And I walk in, and everyone is like, I could see it in their faces, their eyes, just like,
Mhm.
I'm like, hi. And
Uh-huh.
so they try to be slick about it, you know. It's like, oh, so what is your experience in the region? You know, because my job relates to also that region. What is your experience in the region? Do you have a similar background to all of us? And that was how they would open the conversation with me, thinking that I wasn't going to know what they were onto. And I was like, yeah, I have a lot of experience in the region, but nah, it's not related to this field. Oh, well, what did you do? So I just come out and say it. I was like, you know what? I am not going to play this game, because if I don't talk about it, I know they already know. If they don't, they are still going to Google me. If I play this game of like trying to whitewash it or beat around the bush, it looks like I'm ashamed of it. It looks like I have something to hide, and I don't. And like, for God's sakes, I'm all over the internet, just like so many other belly dancers. Like, you can't not find me. You can't not find my dance videos. So, um, yes, a little nerve-wracking and awkward in the beginning, but it really did open up the door and the opportunity for dialogue. Like, people were fascinated and intrigued, and we had a lot of conversations. And I wound up inviting quite a large number of my coworkers to shows that I had all around Tampa. And some of
Oh,
them would, yeah, and some of them would come regularly, and it was fine. You know, the awkwardness just disappeared, and that became, people knew me. That's who I am. That's what I do. Um, it's funny because I had a very tense relationship with a team lead. He just had this very stern personality, very rough around the edges.
okay.
And I accidentally see him at a nightclub that I was dancing at, and he did not expect me to be the belly dancer, the entertainment.
Oh,
And he was sitting
interesting.
there. Yeah, and oh my God, my manager's here. I was mortified. And I was like, I'm just gonna, I actually contemplated just
Perform.
bailing. I was contemplating just, I'm just going to walk out. I'm not going to do my show. I don't care what happens if they never call me back. And I said, you know what? I said, screw it. And I had an extremely revealing costume on that night to boot.
Oh, hilarious.
Full stage makeup, you name it, right? And I got up on stage. I did my thing. I did the best that I could. And do you know what? That man became a human being. He came up to me. He said, hi. Oh my God, I didn't know you'd do that. We had such a more like human interaction after that. It sort of like broke this barrier.
Mhm.
Even though he is of the region, and I know their perception of dancers, but I think he got to see a human side of me, even if it wasn't the most ideal side. But hey, this girl's actually, a human being with interests, and it kind of worked in my favor.
Yeah,
So
it sounds like it did. Oh my goodness. I don't know
yeah.
what I would do.
I'm just not an advocate of hiding something that's been part of my life since I was 20. Like,
Well, they
oh my,
know, and like they Google. So,
right.
like they
Yeah.
find you before you're even hired. You're like, oh, they already know. Oh my God. But either way, like I think you have such a fun way. Like you invited them and everything. I think in my stance, I'm a bit more traditional, where like I've been the director of several teams for different agencies. So I was like, for my personal like sanity, I needed to divide that a lot. Like they knew of it, but I wasn't inviting them out or anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I just can't fathom it. Um, it would just be hilarious to even think of it in my own personality. So I think that's pretty cool to see where it could work. That intrigues me.
Well, I get that and I respect that, and a lot of people approach it that way. But I mean, for me, it really is all that I ever was for such a long time. I can't hide it. I know that they were just dying to show up at the places that I was in, and that would have made it more awkward. And I just said the best way to diffuse that bomb of awkwardness is just to invite them.
Hmm.
And then that was it. Like, conversation over. It was no longer, something to like he about. That's it. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I think we've hit a lot of different topics that could be like their own thing, right? Like identity, like losing yourself sometimes because your belly, it's like you're doing it so much. It's such a part of your day. Like you're even shimmying in line
yeah.
as you're waiting to pay for something, right? Like it really does kind of take over in some parts of our life. So boundaries, dating, work, muggle jobs, and kind of different perspectives there. What do you think are some solutions for ways that the community can just create better boundaries? Or if there you are like you just did a union example, like where you're like you meshed them. Ways to make this healthier and be able to balance the personal life and the dance better.
So yes, obviously I'm a proponent of not hiding it and not having this strict separation because basic human psychology, if you're hiding something, people think there's something wrong with it. So I go for the let's be open about this because it does create opportunities for conversation. And then there's this whole, cultural context that I am well positioned to talk about. So I can inform them about even if they are from the region. All my coworkers and all my supervisors are all from the region. I'm the only, non-native speaker. So they're aware of it, but they don't understand like the nuances and the intricacies of it. So it's an opportunity for me to share my experiences, but also my knowledge of the culture. And whether they are people from the region or just um, people born in the United States, I find that it's information sharing. It's beneficial, and I don't have the bandwidth to just feel embarrassed or ashamed of myself, so I just don't.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um,
Being true to you.
yeah, mean, but it's up to each individual dancer. Like, not, I can understand what you're saying. Like, a lot of people are not comfortable with that, and fine if you could keep that strict separation. If you can have different Facebook accounts, your personal account, your dance account, if you can maintain that with no leakage into, each of the accounts, good luck. But if you can do that, more power to you. But I wasn't even going to try to make that effort. So,
Yeah, it's kind of like whatever works. I would love to be able to do that. I mean, even in I have my own company now, so I don't have, any teams I'm directing. It's just me, but it's still something that I just keep separate because I'm like, nope, I'm here to be a nerd and help your clients and
right.
like, I just don't even want to get in it. Like, you guys will never see me. You're not even in Florida. Like, what's the point? Like,
Yeah.
fun. So, um, and I am someone that does have a personal Facebook, a personal, or like a business belly dance, and like ever since COVID, they're very separate.
Right.
And it's just that was worked for me. Like it was very hard to keep them separate prior to COVID. The
Right.
belly dance thing run amok in my
Yeah.
life for many years with no boundary. I thought I had them. They were going to hell. Like it was not working. So hilarity. Oh my gosh. Um, I love that you like the concept of identity. What do you think would help people develop a stronger identity or just help them find it? Or maybe there's something there that could help the community in that aspect.
Mm, that's a hard question. There's different types of identity. There's, your ethnic identity, there's your religious identity, your national identity, there's identity based on what you do, right?
Mhm.
Which, and I feel like I've sort of experimented with all of those, tried on all those different identities. At some point, they took over my life. So I don't think it's something that necessarily has to be static. I think it's okay to, make one aspect of your life more of your identity at certain points than others. It's okay. I think you just have to never lose sight of your values, and what you believe in. Um, yeah, I'd have to think about that more because obviously identity is one of those hot button issues these days.
Love it.
But yeah.
I'd say things that came up for me, like thinking about this conversation and the topic that we had, preparation today, I would say there was what kept coming back to me was like choose your partner wisely. Choose your partner very wisely. I think this is like a topic I've had for many years with various friends. I've had friends that had to give up dancing. I've had friends that retired. I had friends that they had babies and they kept dancing and they came back. I've had like the whole gamut. And then I have my own experiences with all the things. So I would say how you kind of say like know your values. I think that's something that I always, even with relationships, know your values, know like who you're going to choose, who's in your circle, who do you surround yourself with is very important. And I think especially as an entertainer, you're trying to have all these things and trying to find sanity in all the hilarious and the fun and the wildness of what we do as belly dancers and performers. So I think choosing who you surround yourself with and your partner very wisely is very important because I've seen it so many times where there'll be a talented person that loves dance.
Mm-hmm.
They get married and then they're not dancing anymore. And then they miss it and they regret it. Some people don't, but I've seen it more times than I'd like to hear, about it in the short career I've had, compared to some of my mentors. So I think that's like a thing, in our community where it's like, oh, I'm so excited. I want to date the drummer and I are dating. And I'm like, okay, and then it's like, well,
That
my,
drummer wants you to quit, even though it's okay for him to be on the stage. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I've also
it's like
seen
a thing.
this more times than I care to, and I think that oftentimes in romantic relationships, whether it's with dancers or just, non-dancers, it's usually the woman that winds up making many more of the sacrifices in the relationship. And, there's that gender differential. I don't like that. I don't like that. And there's all sorts of psychological tricks you could play with yourself. Like, well, I'm giving this up for my husband, but really it was my decision. I really don't want to do it, and it's like, not true. But you have to sort of shift the way you think in order for you to feel like you're not being shortchanged or like you're giving up too much. And I don't know how much time we have left, but I have very, I guess, different views about what it means to love someone and to be in love. And we like to equate love with sacrifice, right? Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. I think I'm more of a compromise person. Like I believe in compromise, but I think if you have to sacrifice who you are, what you like, what you
Yeah,
do, if you're not with the right person, if you got to sacrifice so much of what you want in life,
you are. Hmm.
you're not, that's not sustainable. there's going to come a point where you resent it, or you resent your partner. So I think it's always better to find someone who's just on the same page and compatible with you, someone who agrees with your lifestyle, someone who shares your goals, rather than like having to just quit and give everything up.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and because you know what, like, I hate to say this, but they don't sacrifice back for you. It doesn't work that way. I'm old. I'm allowed to say it. I've seen a lot, experienced.
You're not old. Older.
Older. So, yeah.
That's my thing every time. Thank you. I'm at the point now where I'm going to go through some comments. Guys, for all of you on here, feel free to just put in any questions because I'm going to go through them now, okay? And so let me just see here. It kind of goes by while we're talking, so forgive me all if I'm doing this, now, but it's just we're in it and sometimes it's hard to take my eyes off here. So let me go down the list over here. This is kind of culture to control, but it did not. I think what they're trying to say is we were at the point of the discussion about relationships, actually. So where we're talking about like the guy that was a bit controlling, and but I do not think maybe they're saying this is kind of the culture to control, but I don't think it's like something. I don't think I did not something bad. I'm not sure quite what you said there. But if you want to clarify, we will read on it further. So I'll go into there. Oh my goodness. Hi, everyone. There's all these people. Hi. Hi, Vanessa. She's one of our guests before. And if there's any questions like after, I'll be posting this like always afterwards. So if you have any follow-ups and things like that, we'll be happy to share and make sure we look at that. Do you have any kind of while people are typing, any kind of closing remarks or wishes for anyone? What takeaways that you want them to have after listening to this conversation about fabulous merging or sometimes separation of the two lives that we lead?
I think we've covered basically everything, but that decision of whether or not to keep your dance life separate from your personal and or professional life is, it's a very personal decision. And I think it's up to each dancer to determine what makes sense for her or him, and take it from there. For me, it didn't make sense to shove it under the carpet. I think you just have to be comfortable. I think whatever decisions you make in a romantic relationship, if you're going to give something up because you're getting married or something, I think it genuinely has to come from a place of I want this, not
Yeah.
this was sort of a condition for me to be in this relationship and I'm going to pretend or convince myself I want this. And sometimes it's very difficult to really understand your own motives. Sometimes it takes a lot of introspection, but um, also just to reevaluate the concept of sacrifice. That is, and that's a whole other conversation, but it's a word that I don't necessarily love,
Mm-hmm.
or at least the way that it's popularly understood. Not crazy about the idea of
Mm-hmm.
ultimate
Yeah.
sacrifice, because they say, relationships and love is hard. Yeah, it's not supposed to be that hard. It's not supposed
Mm-hmm.
to be that hard. So
I think for my I guess my view of it, I would love for anyone listening to just know like it's normal for sometimes one side or the other to kind of take over. It's, I think, happened to kind of anyone I've ever talked about this about at some point in their career. As performers, you just, it's kind of like part of it. You're acting, you're doing this whole thing, you have this whole life, this whole career and top of another career and on top of everything else. So it's very normal. Like you are not alone. If you're at a point now where you're like, this is taking over my life, maybe it's the personal. It's like taking so much over that you can barely get to the dance. And you're like, I need to practice more. I need to do this more. Um, you're normal. It happens.
yeah.
Take a step back, maybe take a break, which I was horrible at. I never took breaks until I was like, I just need to retire, and that was my short-lived break. But I learned a lot. So whatever you need to do, gain perspective, define what what you want the next year, 2 years, whatever time period to be, and talk to your peers, talk to your community. Like, you will be surprised how many people have gone through this. Just reach out. Like, you are totally normal. And there's a lot of like belly dancers full time, but they have a family life that they have to balance. Or if they don't have a family life, you have a belly dance life and you have a career life that you have to balance. Or maybe it's like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like versions, and you can get a lot of perspective. So hopefully this conversation just kind of opens that door to these type of things a little bit more. So
I think that's great advice.
we are at time. Oh my gosh, it goes quickly.
That really went by quickly. Yeah.
It goes like that. So we look forward to your comments, everyone. Luna, I'm going to put all her tagging, all her stuff. It's Luna of Cairo on Instagram. I'll make sure to put her handle and everything, her blog, so you can see it. It's chock full of information. I mean, it's been going on forever. Like, I've read about it so many times, like since I was a baby belly dancer, Luna. It's crazy. It was always really like, I just loved it. It was always just like in your face and like very, like, I love that type of like direct writing.
Shock jock sort of writing.
But very informative. Like, you just learn so much. So love it, love it. And we look forward to keeping it going, everyone. I wish you all the best of luck, Luna, as you are continuing, your life here and everything that it brings. And I'm super excited to see what you're doing next.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was fabulous.
Yay. All right, bye. Bye. We'll see you soon.